Thank you everyone for coming out today. As Danny said, this is a time of excitement. A lot of us have the feeling that the stars are aligned, people are interested, things are moving this way. We think we're all in the right place at the right time with the right ideas to solve some big problems. Now, Ethical Systems, the site, the project, has its origins in my inability to understand all the things I needed to understand. Actually, wait, how do I get this? Now I figured out this. Here we are. Find mine. Jeremy and Ann, oh, there it is. Okay. So when I came to the Stern School in 2011, I had no interest in business. It never occurred to me that I would want to be in a business school. I just wanted a way to pay the rent in New York City. My last book was coming out, The Righteous Mind. I wanted to be here. I had a young family, didn't want to be traveling all around, so I called up Bruce Buchanan. I'd met him before when I spoke in the ethics series here. I now thought, well, let me just teach business ethics for you. That'll be a really sweet gig, get one of those subsidized apartments, have fun in New York. And so I came up here, and at the time, everybody, of course, was still talking about the global financial crisis, Bernie Madoff. I mean, 2011, like we were still very raw, and the mood about business was still very, very negative in the country. Newspapers, business press was asking questions like, are B schools to blame? And do business schools incubate criminals because they teach so little ethics? So it became a very, very interesting problem for me as a social psychologist. So here I was, here to teach business ethics, and all the business press is saying, you guys need to teach business ethics, but everything I know as a social psychologist tells me that if we simply have a class on business ethics, it's not going to really do anything on its own. You can't just put ethics in people's heads, because as we know in social psychology, the situation overwhelms whatever residue of ethics you could put in somebody's head 3 hours a week for a few weeks. So the famous Asch experiments on conformity, the Milgram experiments on obedience to authority, and the Stanford prison study all show, the classic social psych works show, that good people will do terrible things if people around them are even gently encouraging them to do so. So what do? Well, the thought that I had as I was talking with people was, well, let's embrace that fact. Let's accept that and embrace it. And let's turn these social forces to our advantage. Let's use them to actually encourage and make it easier to be ethical than to be unethical. So I started reading. There was a couple of books. The field of behavioral business ethics had really just begun. So books by Anton Brunsel and Linda Trevino, who are here today. So I started reading those. And then I realized, okay, now I need to know, I guess, about accounting and compliance for all these, some of these words I've never even heard before. Okay, and then I need to know about this stuff and this stuff and this stuff. And I realized I'm 48 years old and I'm not going to live long enough. I can't possibly read all this stuff. Fortunately, I didn't have to, because one thing I was reading was the history of capitalism, a little bit of Adam Smith, and by the magic of division of labor, you can actually have very big things happen by each person just doing what they're a specialist in. You don't have to know everything. So I started calling up the experts. I just bought the domain name, ethicalsystems.org, put up a very primitive site in 2011 and 2012, and just over the next 2 years started inviting the country's experts on all these topics. So if you go to our site, you click on the About Us tab, it brings you to our collaborators page. We've got people like Dan Ariely, Dorothy Bellman-Pauli, Max Faserman. Here's the rest of the collaborators, many of whom are here today. And so we all work together. Usually one or two of them would focus on a particular page. So if you click on the research tab, that's the heart of the site. So if you click on the research, you get a drop-down menu. Here are the pages that we have filled out. We have a lot more coming. So for example, if you were to then click on the leadership button, that would take you to a page that Linda Trevino wrote, where there's a very brief introduction to how to think about the topic. You scroll down, areas of research. We summarize for you what is the relevant research with links to the original articles if you want to read them, but we assume most of you don't want to read those articles. They're behind the paywall usually. So we make this work, which is locked away behind paywalls and academic jargon, we make it really accessible. We then give specific ideas to apply that are based on that research. We have case studies and lots of links so that you can learn more. So our goal is to just get the information out there in a form that the people who need it or could benefit from it can actually get it. So we had our official launch in January of 2014. We got a lot of good publicity from Inc. magazine, New York Times, Washington Post. And as we began working together and trying to figure out what are all the things we have to know, what does it mean to do ethical systems design? What we realized is that you have to work at 3 levels simultaneously. This is one of our core insights. That you have to, well, that's why we call the conference, nudges, norms, and laws. They're very different sorts of things, and these 3 levels can either work together to support each other, or they can contradict each other and bring everything to a halt. So to explain, think about it this way. The business world is composed of people, of course. People are, each business is full of individuals. Each individual has a particular psychology, and we know a lot about how to influence that psychology. So huge amounts of research. If you've read the book Nudge by Thaler and Sunstein, huge amounts of research from psychology on how you influence individuals, for example, to be more honest as one application. All right, so you can do a lot of work on that, and a lot of work is done. We cover that on the site. But these individuals aren't just randomly moving in space, like Brownian motion or something. They're in organizations, groups, divisions, work units, and anytime you put people together, you get an emergent culture. You can't stop that from happening. So there will be a culture in any group. And how do you change that? How does it go bad? How does it go good? So you need research on culture and culture change. But these groups aren't just floating around in a void. They, if we think of those as companies at the upper level, they are moving and changing policies within a particular ecosystem. So law is a big part of that ecosystem. When we change laws, we do it because we think it will influence the behavior of these companies as they move around and change their policies and strategies. But it's not just law. It's also changes in national culture. We all know the millennials are different from the baby boomers, and that kind of cultural change is going to sort of, in the whole nation, is going to feed down and influence what's going on in terms of corporate culture and at the lowest level as well. So you have to think of 3 levels of analysis. So once you take this perspective, then a kind of a way forward became clear to us, and I'm going to share with you now our master plan for changing business ethics, first in America and then globally. So the first couple of years was spent just getting the research together, just what's out there, what do we already know? There's no reason for us to do original research when there's so much research out there. So that's what we've been doing our first couple of years. And now we're in the second phase. We're developing key partnerships. That's why so many of you hear from businesses, consultants, a couple of NGOs, even West Point. So we've been developing partnerships with people who are thinking about this, who are working to change organizations. And our main product for this year is the ethical culture survey that Linda Trevini will tell you about in 2 sessions from now. So this is a free survey that any company can use, and we just launched it. We just got the very first pilot data from a company that's working with us, and Linda will present just a little bit of it. And so we're developing this, and we think that if we offer something which is empirically validated and free, we think it could be widely used, and once it's widely used, then we'll be ready to change the ecosystems of business. So that roughly corresponds to the three levels. What do I mean by change the ecosystems of business? So the first thing is we think that, as I said, the stars are aligned. People want this to happen. Bill Dudley of the New York Fed gave a talk to the leading bankers a year and a half ago saying, you guys need to measure your culture, conceptualize it, and then you guys need to start improving it. Don't just do compliance. You guys need to be working on ethics. Now go do it. And they said, well, okay, but 2 years now, they haven't figured out how to do it. Azish and I have spoken with groups of ethics and compliance officers. We asked, what do you spend most of your time on, ethics or compliance? Okay, it's all compliance. What would you like to spend your time on? Ethics. But we don't know how to do that. There aren't clear standards. Well, we think that our group, we can be the trusted referees, the trusted advisors who can say, okay, here's the way to conceptualize it and measure it. So if we do that, we can improve the quality and reduce the cost of ethics assessments and ethics interventions. So once we have these various tools, we have all the people on board, then I think the way is clear to turn business ethics into a normal science. It is not a normal science. A normal science is one in which people try things, they get feedback, the world knows about it, and then people build on it. That doesn't happen. Because as I said, the information is kind of locked away in the academy, and it's even more locked away in business. Businesses are always afraid of legal ramifications. They're always afraid of being sued. They often are sued, and when they're sued, in the deposition process, any information they collect could be used against them. So why would we want to measure our ethics? What if we find something bad? So if we can solve that problem, we're working with regulators to try to figure out how can we get safe harbor, how can we remove the dangers of collecting information, and then we can make business ethics be like anything else, where people try something, they work, companies and researchers work together, they try something to increase honesty, to increase better reporting here, whatever it is, and then we all share the information. We all grow from it. And then finally, if we can do all of that, then finally we can transform the MBA curriculum and not just preach and and teach what we've been teaching, we can actually teach ethical systems design, skills people can take when they go out, they can actually run better companies that will be more resistant to ethical failure. So our goal is to go from the present state here to this. And we think that if we can do that, we can change the world. So our goals for today, as Aziz said, this group is about 40% ethics and compliance officers, people in business, about 40% researchers, academics, and then various miscellaneous other people. We have a very diverse group here, so there's a lot we can learn from each other, and if you leave here today and haven't learned something interesting and useful, then we failed and we apologize to you and we'll refund your money. Our goal, another goal is to grow the field. As Peter Henry said, this is an all-hands-on-deck sort of thing. The researchers can't do this on their own. The compliance officers can't do this on their own. We have to work together. So if you leave here today, you haven't met anybody interesting, anybody you want to follow up on, we failed you. And finally, we'd like to leave here with a more refined agenda. So you'll find sticky notes. Are they out here or are they in the break room, I think? Yeah, so there's a lot of pads of sticky notes, and there'll be some easels, I think, with titles on them. So please put any ideas you want, but we're suggesting that you focus on what are the questions, what are the gaps, what are the things that we actually need to know factually or about how people respond. What are the gaps? What tools do you need to actually make changes in your organization? So what are the questions? And then also what are the insights, either those that you brought with you today from your experience or that you've gotten here today from the conference. So if everybody could write at least 2 or 3 such notes and put them on the board. Then in our last session, which is looking forward to the future, I'll have something to say when I come up here with Charlie. So we're very excited. We think that there's a real trend. There's a wave here. We think everything's aligned, and let's go.